Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for coming to hear us. I'm delighted to be back in Japan and in Tokyo after a gap, rather too long, of about 13 years since I was last here, so a lot has changed. It's a tremendous privilege to talk to you. I haven't got a PowerPoint. My colleagues who will be speaking later have lots of fancy pictures and wonderful pictures, but I thought it was too boring just to have a blank screen, so we put up an image of London, one of the images from the Olympics of London Bridge with the logo, and amazing American company, Elizabeth Streb, who do sort of extreme dance, sometimes off the side of buildings, in this case the Mayor's Building in London. So you can admire that if you get tired of what I'm saying. Anyway, I'm delighted that we're working with you all to share our insights into the successes as well as some of the challenges of the London Cultural Olympiad in 2012 and the once-in-a-generation opportunity for Japan in 2020. The Cultural Olympiad saw 43 million people engage as participants and audience members, with astonishingly over 50% of this number from outside London, which I think is a tremendous achievement, London obviously being the venue for pretty well all the games themselves. But as well as this unique opportunity to develop wider public engagement with the arts and culture, 2012 also provided the sector itself with new partnerships, new models, new collaborations, which will be vital to the longer-term sustainability of the sector and the wider impact of the arts through social, societal change. And that's still going on. Who would have thought we'd ever see a bouncy castle version of Stonehenge, Sacrilege, by Jeremy Deller, inspiring communities of all ages around the UK, and a piece of artwork which we at the British Council are now deploying in different parts of the world. We hope to take it to Mexico later this year, and I'm sure you can have it here in Tokyo, if you like, in 2020. Who'd have thought we'd have a mass bell-ringing project by an artist across the country featuring close on 3 million participants for 3.5 minutes on the opening day of the Olympics. These were all bold, simple, inclusive, and yes, humorous British ideas, but ones conceived by major artists and very powerful in their inspiring force, I think. The Cultural Olympiad, of course, also contributed significantly to our international standing in the UK, both, I think, in terms of what I prefer to call smart power rather than soft power, but also economic return. The GREAT campaign, which you're about to see more of and indeed are seeing in Tokyo, which was developed as a single brand for UK tourism and trade and grew almost directly out of the cultural programme and the Olympics, has a reported return on investment of about £1.2 billion. We also learned a great deal ourselves from the opportunity around the Paralympic Games and a much stronger, more coherent approach to arts and disability, which is of vital importance in countries such as ours, with populations of such diverse sets of needs. The Unlimited programme that came about from this, it's called Unlimited, no question one of the most important legacies of 2012, and it continues to support disabled artists, reach new audiences, create fantastic new work, and develop new partnerships around the world. It's become one of certainly the UK's and the British Council's calling cards around the world in many countries in which we operate, as far apart as Qatar, Bangladesh, Brazil, and we hope in Japan. In fact, we were discussing only this morning with the Japan Foundation how we can build an unlimited program with deaf and disabled artists through to 2020. And the good thing about that is that major changes follow in social attitudes to disability, which is surely a win-win situation for everyone for, in the big society picture, a pretty small amount of financial investment. In terms of the British Council's involvement in the 2012 Cultural Olympiad, and I must say I was referred to as being critical to the planning of the Olympiad, I feel a bit of an imposter because actually I arrived in the British Council in 2011 when most of the stuff the hard work had already been done, but I was involved in some of the planning in my previous job at the Barbican Centre. But in the British Council, we saw it as a pivotal moment for developing new and building on existing international relationships, positioning the UK as an open, liberal-minded and forward-thinking nation through its values and its cultural policies, its arts work and its many artists and creative entrepreneurs. We were also able to move our own British Council focus, and I had just arrived, to much more of a mutual and reciprocal basis, paying as much attention and respect to the work of overseas visitors, overseas artists, as to our own, in tune with the UK's Olympic vision of welcoming the world. Now, this has really begun to characterize our arts work at the British Council since that date, and we are now working hard with our Arts Council England friends as part of our global vision to strengthen the presence of other cultures within our programme and within the UK, as well, of course, as to promote the work of UK arts and artists. I've said in speeches before, but it's worth repeating since I haven't actually said it here in Japan, firing, and I quote somebody else here, firing your culture like a gun at another culture and another people, a mere projection policy, doesn't really work anymore in international relations. You get much more out of the value of relationships if you show openness and generosity to other cultures at the same time. We focused our work on a number of key areas in partnership, of course, with the UK sector, the Cultural Olympiad organisers, and our extensive professional network overseas, like the one here in Japan, through our 110-country operation. Projects such as BT's River of Music, which involved over 1,500 musicians from every country participating in the Games, stages along the River Thames featuring musicians from around the world from all continents, and often in mixed jam sessions with UK musicians. I saw a prelude to that out in Colombia, where British jazz musicians were working with local artists, and that developed into a programme for the Olympiad. The Poetry Parnassus project at the South Bank Centre, which showcased 205 poets from around the world, matching through one single art form the scale of the Games. And the World Shakespeare Festival, and especially the Globe to Globe project, united local culturally diverse communities in the UK with theatre companies from around the world. It even allowed newly formed nations their first steps on an international stage. I particularly remember the support we gave to the theatre company from South Sudan, which at the time was the newest national theatre from the newest country on our planet to be able to perform one of Shakespeare's plays. It brought actors together from different tribal factions in that troubled state. In 2012, we also conceived of the idea of Transform, which Manami has just referred to, a 5-year exchange artistically between Brazil and the UK, seeking, in effect, to transform the relationship and understanding between our two countries through the arts and arts practice, and at the same time bridging the span between the London and the Rio Olympics. We saw then, and see still, Transform as an opportunity to develop the Brazilian art sector skills at a time of increased public attention. And we've got a big program of cultural skills training for Brazil in 2016, including work on policy, leadership, cultural capacity, volunteering, and technical skills. And that's something that we could work with you on if you wanted that within the context of 2020. One of the projects from 2012 was a collaboration to highlight work by marginalized communities, such as the homeless, by the Royal Opera and a company called Streetwise Opera in London, a community-based company, through a mixed funding partnership between us, Arts Council England, and the Gulbenkian Foundation, together with research from Queen Mary's University. We've been able to start work on a Rio version of the same idea for 2016. And again, our talks with the Japan Foundation this morning were talking about an idea similar to that, which we might be able to work along for 2020 here in Tokyo. That's one of the great things about legacy. You can take learning forward from the great projects and reinvent them in other parts of the world for even more cumulative impact, both in terms of the arts themselves, and in terms of society. Legacy is an overused word. I'm not particularly fond of it, but it's a useful word, and it doesn't actually bother me that much. And I know it must seem rather odd to you here today to be thinking, why is he talking about legacy when we're still 5 years away from the games themselves? Let me tell you, I think my colleagues who are speaking later will bear that out. It is never too early to start thinking about what comes next. What happened in 2012 in London and around the UK has led to so much good progress in so many areas. We've just spoken about the work on deaf and disabled arts, the innovative use of public space. Fran, I know, is going to show you some great photos of this. Effective ways of harnessing mass participation in arts work through projects like Big Dance. A step change in our ability to create fantastical digital arts work to engage and inspire mass young audiences. And this last idea is taken forward through a wonderful project called The Space, which is a partnership again between Arts Council England and the BBC, with us too making a modest contribution. It's another piece of evidence of real legacy from that year 2012. And then there too is the legacy of working in cities undergoing transformation or major events. And I'd cite the success here of the UK City of Culture Londonderry in 2013 in Northern Ireland, which was supported by us at the British Council as a major piece of legacy and internationalizing a very positive story about that until recently very troubled part of the United Kingdom. As well as the cultural program that celebrated last year's Commonwealth Games in Glasgow, again, learning many of the lessons and from the 2012 experience. Then there's a legacy of being able to involve the whole of the UK in the Cultural Olympiad. And Mr. Saito has been referring to that just now, and he's saying that the dream here is to involve the whole of Japan and not just the Tokyo metropolitan area. Even if the main sporting events are here, then it's essential that you engage the other parts of the country. And I think this was a major achievement by our UK team, and I'm glad to hear that it's one of your great ambitions here. I'm sure that Fran will also mention her new job up in Hull in the northeast of England. She's playing a senior role in the Year of Culture in Hull, which is a pretty deprived but very proud city in the northeast with an incredibly bold plan, both local and selectively international, that we believe, and I'm sure it will totally transform the fortunes of that city through culture and creativity. And we'll certainly be supporting it at the British Council as we did with Londonderry. Now, as was discussed extensively at the recent King's Cultural Institute conference on major events, which has already been referred to, partnerships are absolutely vital for the delivery of a successful Cultural Olympiad. And I hope through our partnership, we can continue to work together to support your delivery of a great program in 2020. But it's not just nation partnerships or even artistic partnerships. I think it's interesting that two of the institutions represented here by me at the British Council and my friend Nick McDowell at Arts Council England. Now, before 2012, our organizations were perfectly friendly, but had very little in the way of a common partnered approach to cultural policy or international strategy. Now we work very closely together on ideas, on a specific program, and on supporting artists at home and overseas. It makes much better use of public money, it's better for the artists, and it's more fun for us. So I think if I can encourage you all to try to come together at all levels in this country to support a bigger vision than any of you is possible to deliver on your own. I was a skeptic once, I admit. I doubted it could work in the UK in 2012. I think we're a naturally skeptical nation of Brits. And indeed, the early phases of our 2012 project in the UK were somewhat troubled and disturbed for a number of years. And I think it was only when the various key stakeholders came together and sorted the governance, sorted the artistic big vision and leadership, and sorted the funding model with contributions from a variety of sources, both public and private, that the whole show began to motor forward in a very positive way. And I know there are those who are doubters here in Japan, since I realize there are other pressing social and reconstruction issues for you to address. But if I may say, I think you should try to use this enormous cultural opportunity to try and help solve those other issues, rather than ignore the opportunity and try and solve those social and economic issues in isolation. I think this Olympiad can surely help in that whole social reconstruction and change. As a born Londoner, I've seen swathes of my home city reborn through the 2012 project in a way that was unimaginable 25 years ago. Poor old, run-down, unloved, unregarded, unfashionable East London. Everything that was east of the City of London. I never went anywhere near it when I was a young boy. My parents wouldn't let me. Now a major centre for sport, new creative businesses, new living, new parks, new recreational facilities, new arts venues, and new vibrancy, all because of a vision of legacy that looked beyond 2012 from the outset 6 or so years before 2012. I think in your case here in Japan, that means now. And we stand ready to help, all of us, in whatever way we can. Learn from our mistakes, please, but learn from where we might have got it right. Thank you.